They say time heals everything. They lie. Time doesn't heal. It buries. It takes the wound and covers it with dust, year after year, until you forget the sound of his voice, until you forget the shape of his laugh, until you wake up one morning and realize you can't quite remember exactly how he used to say your name. And then, one small breath of wind, one brown envelope under your front door, one rusted brass key, and every layer of dust blows away. The wound is right there again, still bleeding, still raw, like the 5 years between never happened at all. I was 12 when my father walked out our front door into the Seattle rain. He kissed the top of my head. He told me to finish my drawing. He said he was going to the corner store for milk. He never came back. No note, no body, no phone call, just 5 years of silence so loud it had a sound of its own. My name is Caleb Mercer. I'm 17 years old. And on the morning of my 18th birthday, a brown envelope slid under our front door with no name on it, no stamp, no return address, just a brass key, number 418, a prepaid lease to a storage unit by the harbor, and 4 words, in handwriting I hadn't seen in 5 years. Trust no one. Run. I thought I was about to find old photo albums, maybe a letter, maybe an apology. I was wrong. What my father left in that storage unit wasn't a goodbye. It was a loaded gun. The night it happened, I was 12. Seattle rain is different from other rain. It doesn't fall. It hangs. It drifts. It seeps into everything until even the inside of your house feels damp. That night, the rain was hanging in the air like a held breath. Dad and I were at the kitchen table. He had spread a paper napkin between us. He was drawing a map on it. A treasure map, for fun, because that was the kind of father he was. The kind who turned a Tuesday night into an adventure. X marks the spot, he said. He tapped the napkin. But here's the trick, Cal. The X is never where you think it is. Where is it then? Underneath. He looked up at me. He had this smile. Soft, tired, a little sad. I didn't understand the sadness then. I was 12. I thought sad was only a funeral feeling. Cal, listen. Whatever you're looking at, whatever someone tells you, is the truth. You always look beneath the surface. Promise me. Promise. He ruffled my hair. He smelled like wood varnish and coffee. The smells of a man who restored antiques for a living. The smells of safety. Then the phone rang. I remember the way his face changed, like a door closing, like a light going out. He answered. He listened. He said nothing. He hung up. He looked at me for a long time, longer than he ever had before, like he was trying to memorize my face. Then he stood up. He pulled on his coat. He picked up his keys. Just running to the store, bud. Be back in 20. He kissed the top of my head. He walked to the door. He stepped into the rain. And he never came back. 5 years. 5 years of my mother coming home from double shifts at the ICU. 5 years of her standing at the kitchen sink at 2 a.m, washing the same plate over and over because her hands needed something to do. 5 years of her pretending she was fine. 5 years of me pretending I believed her. People kept telling us he'd come back the first year. Then they stopped saying it. They started saying things like closure and healing and moving on, as if grief was a road you could finish walking. The detective on the case was a man named Fenton Doyle. Big man, soft voice, hands that always seemed too gentle for his size. He came by once a month for the first year, then every 2 months, then every 6. He brought donuts. He sat at our kitchen table where my father used to draw treasure maps on napkins. He said things like, "Linda, you have to take care of yourself," to my mother. He said, "How's school, big guy?" to me. He ruffled my hair the same way my dad used to. I hated him for it. I didn't know why I hated him. I just did. I'm 17 now. I turn 18 on Thursday. I work at an antique store on Pine Street. The owner is a man named Walter Knox. He's in his 70s. Gray hair, stooped shoulders, eyes that have seen too much. He was my father's best friend. He gave me the job 2 days after Dad disappeared. Said the store needed help dusting the shelves. I think he gave me the job because he couldn't think of any other way to take care of me. I dust shelves. I polish brass. I read the little tags my father used to write describing where each antique came from. His handwriting is still on half the pieces in the shop. 5 years later, Walter never replaced them. Sometimes I catch Walter watching me, just watching, like he's waiting for something. I never ask what. The envelope came on a Tuesday morning. It was raining. Of course it was raining. Seattle in October. The sky looked like a wet blanket someone had thrown over the city. I came downstairs in my school hoodie, my backpack on one shoulder, my mother already gone for her shift. There was a brown envelope sitting on the kitchen tile, right under the mail slot. No stamp, no address, no name. I picked it up. It was heavy, something solid inside. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where my father had drawn the treasure map, the same table where Doyle had eaten our donuts, the same table where my mother had cried herself to sleep more times than I could count. I opened the envelope. 3 things fell out. A brass key. Old, heavy, stamped with the number 418, a folded lease agreement for a place called Harbor Vault Storage, prepaid in cash, 5 years, expiring this Friday, 3 days from now, and a yellow sticky note. Caleb, if you are reading this, I am out of time. Trust no one. Go alone. Dad. The rain kept tapping against the kitchen window. I didn't go to school. I drove. The Camry belonged to my father. After he disappeared, my mother couldn't bear to sell it. She couldn't bear to drive it either. So it sat in the garage for 4 years. The day I got my license, she handed me the keys without a word. She walked back into the house. I think about that a lot, the way she handed me the keys, the way she let go. Harbor Vault Storage was on the industrial edge of Seattle, down by the shipping yards, the kind of place where the buildings are gray and the windows are barred and even the seagulls look angry. I sat in the car for a long time because I knew. I don't know how I knew, but I did. Whatever was on the other side of door 418 was going to change my life. I got out. The man at the front desk was named Greg. He didn't look up when I came in. He was watching something on his phone. Unit 418. Sign in. I signed. Caleb Mercer. The pen scratched against the paper. Down the hall. Last on the left. Lights are motion sensor. Don't stay past dark. Place gives me the creeps. He still hadn't looked up. I walked down the corridor. I had never been inside a storage facility before. I didn't know they were so quiet. I didn't know my footsteps would echo like that. The fluorescent lights flickered on as I passed, one after another, like the building was breathing. I found Unit 418 at the end. I stood in front of it. I slid the key into the lock. It clicked. I lifted the door. The first thing I saw was the corkboard. It covered an entire wall, from floor to ceiling. Newspaper clippings, photographs, maps, pieces of string connecting one thing to another, pins, index cards, sticky notes covered in my father's handwriting. It looked like the wall of a man losing his mind, except every string was straight. Every photo was perfectly squared. Every clipping was filed in chronological order. This wasn't the wall of a man losing his mind. This was the wall of a man who had found something. There was a drafting table to my left, topographical maps spread across it, red ink, mathematical equations, a pencil still resting in the groove where my father had left it 5 years ago. The pencil hadn't moved in 5 years. I looked at the empty stool in front of the table, at the indent in the seat cushion, the exact shape of where my father had sat. And something broke in me. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small, quiet break, like a wine glass dropped on carpet. You don't hear it, but it's broken just the same. I sat down on the stool, where he had sat, where his body had pressed into the cushion. I rested my hands on the drafting table, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt close to him. There was a leather-bound journal on the corner of the table. I picked it up. The leather was stained dark in one corner. brown stain. Old. I didn't want to think about what it was. I opened the cover. First page. One sentence. Thick black ink. His handwriting. The Ashcroft Empire was built on the bones of dead men, and I have found where they buried the truth. I closed the journal. I opened it again. The sentence didn't change. Ashcroft. I knew the name. Everyone in Seattle knew the name. Hollis Ashcroft, real estate developer, old money. Bought up half the waterfront in the 90s. There was an Ashcroft wing at the Children's Hospital, an Ashcroft library at the university, an Ashcroft Plaza, downtown. 42 stories of glass and steel, a monument to the family fortune. The Ashcrofts were Seattle royalty, and my father had written that their empire was built on the bones of dead men. I started flipping through the journal. The story took shape in pieces. 6 years ago, Hollis Ashcroft had hired my father to restore a set of 19th century mahogany cabinets, family heirlooms. My father took them to his workshop. During the restoration, he found a hidden compartment in the base of one of the cabinets. Inside was a leather ledger. The ledger belonged to Hollis Ashcroft's great-grandfather, a man named Cornelius Ashcroft, the founder of the Ashcroft fortune. According to the family legend, Cornelius had made his money in timber and shipping. According to the ledger, Cornelius had made his money another way. I kept reading. The SS Cascadia Light. I had never heard of it. There was no history class lecture I half remembered. Nothing. Because there was nothing to remember. Because the SS Cascadia Light had been erased. The ship had sailed out of Seattle, a passenger vessel, carrying 87 immigrants from across the Pacific. Workers, families, mothers, and children. The ship was also carrying a shipment of unrefined gold, bound for a Seattle bank. The ship never reached port. According to the official history, it sank in a storm. A few bodies were recovered. The gold was lost. The Cascadia Light became a footnote. Then it became nothing at all. Except the ship hadn't sunk in a storm. Cornelius Ashcroft had sunk it. Deliberately. To steal the gold. And to make sure there were no witnesses left. 87 immigrants drowned in the dark, so one man could become rich. I put the journal down. I walked to the corner of the unit, and I threw up into a metal wastebasket. When I was done, I sat on the cold concrete floor and I cried. I hadn't cried in years. I had forgotten what it felt like, the way your chest hurts, the way your throat closes, the way your eyes burn. I cried for 87 people I had never met. I cried for a father I was beginning to understand for the first time. I made myself keep reading. My father wasn't looking for the gold. He never cared about the gold. The gold was the bait. What he was actually looking for was the names. Cornelius Ashcroft had been very careful to make sure the 87 passengers were never identified. No memorial, no graves, no mention anywhere. They had been erased completely. Their families never knew what happened to them. Many weren't even reported missing because no one knew they had boarded the ship in the first place. 87 people erased for decades. But there was a list, a handwritten passenger manifest, written by the captain of the Cascadia Light before he died. And my father had found out where it was hidden. I turned the page, and I saw a photograph. Old, black and white. The corners soft from being handled. A young woman, maybe 20, standing on a dock, long dark coat, holding a baby. Her face was tired. Her eyes were wide. There was something in her expression I couldn't name. Something like a person who has just survived something they shouldn't have survived. The dock was Seattle. I could tell by the shape of the hills behind her. I turned the photograph over. My father's handwriting on the back, in pencil, faint. Great-grandmother Eliza Mercer, the only survivor of the SS Cascadia Light. She kept the truth hidden to protect her son. I am doing this for her, for us. For us. I stared at the woman in the photograph, at the baby in her arms. The baby was my grandfather, the grandfather I had never met. He had died before I was born. My father had told me once that his father was a quiet man, a man who never talked about where he came from. Now I knew why. The blood in my veins was the blood of one of the 87. A woman had stepped off that ship, or jumped, or swum, or been pulled half dead from the freezing water, and she had carried the truth in her chest for the rest of her life. She had been silent. She had survived, and she had passed something down to her son, to her grandson, to my father, to May. This wasn't a story I had stumbled into. This was a story I had been born into. A sound pulled me back, down the hallway, outside. The clang of a heavy metal door. I froze. A voice, low, male, carrying through the corrugated walls. Loading docks open. Check the log. Another voice. Higher. Faster. Kids signed in 2 hours ago. Unit 418. Move. Footsteps. 2 pairs. Heavy boots. My heart stopped. Someone was walking down this corridor to find me, because the prepaid lease had expired, or maybe it had a hidden alarm, or maybe the second I signed my name on Greg's clipboard, somewhere in an office downtown, a screen had lit up. Caleb Mercer. Unit 418. Trust no one, my father had written. I had trusted Greg. I had signed my name. Stupid. 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 The footsteps were getting closer. I grabbed the photograph. The journal. A USB drive I hadn't even examined. I shoved them into my backpack. The footsteps were 3 units away. 2 units. I killed the overhead light. I dropped to the floor behind the drafting table. I pulled my knees to my chest. I clamped one hand over my own mouth. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. A beam of light cut through the darkness. White, cold, bright. He really built a war room in here. 5 years. And we never knew. Boss is going to lose his mind. Find the kid. The light swept again. Closer. Across the drafting table. Inches from where I was hiding. I closed my eyes. I thought about my mother, and something happened to me. I stopped being scared. I got angry. Anger thinks faster than fear. I felt around me on the dark floor. My fingers found something. A loose screw. My father had spilled a handful of them at some point. I waited until the light was on the far wall, pointed away from me. I threw the screw toward the back left corner of the unit, toward a metal shelving rack stacked with my father's old restoration chemicals. The screw hit the rack. A jar tipped, fell, shattered. The smell of acetone bloomed through the dark. Both flashlight beams whipped toward the noise. Back corner. Go. Both men stepped into the unit, their backs to the door. For 1 second, maybe 2. I moved. I sprinted for the open door. I clipped the larger man's shoulder. He spun. He grabbed for me. His fingers caught my hoodie. The fabric tore. I kept running. I burst into the corridor. The light snapped on. I ran past Unit 416, Unit 414, Unit 412. The fire exit was a red dot in the distance. Hey! I hit the fire exit door with both hands. It exploded outward. Cold air, wet pavement, rain on my face. I jammed the key in the ignition. The Camry coughed, started. In my rearview mirror, 2 men in dark jackets stood in the alley watching me go. One had a phone to his ear. The other wasn't running. He was just standing, calmly, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew that running wasn't going to save me. I didn't go home. If my mother saw my face, she would know. The night my dog died when I was 9. The night I failed my chemistry midterm. The night I broke up with the only girl I had ever brought home. She always knew before I said a word. Mothers like her have built-in radar for the bad news their children are about to give them. So I drove to the only place where the lights were still on at 1 in the morning. The antique shop on Pine Street. Walter Knox lived above his store. I parked at the curb. I looked up at the second-floor window. The light was on, a pale yellow rectangle in the dark. Of course it was on. Walter never slept. I rang the bell 3 times. He answered before I finished the 3rd ring. His hair was uncombed. His glasses were crooked. He was wearing a brown cardigan over a white undershirt. He looked old. older than I had ever seen him. He looked at my face. He didn't say anything. He just opened the door wider. He stepped aside, like he had been expecting me. For 5 years. "Tea," he said. "I don't want tea." "Sit. I'll make tea." I sat down at the lace-covered table. He filled the kettle. He moved slowly, the way old men do. He didn't ask why I was there at 1 in the morning. He just made tea. I watched his hands. They were trembling. Just slightly. But enough. He brought the tea to the table. He sat across from me. He folded his hands. Then, quiet, almost a whisper. "You found it." I reached into my backpack. I pulled out the brass key. I set it on the lace tablecloth. Number 418. Walter looked at the key. His eyes filled. He didn't cry. He just sat there. And his eyes filled. And he looked. "He told me he had set something up," Walter said. "He never told me what. He said the less I knew, the safer you and your mother would be." "You knew." "I knew he was in trouble. I knew he wasn't coming back. You knew he didn't leave us." "I knew." The anger rose in my chest. Hot. Sudden. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I promised him. Because if you knew, they would have killed you the way they killed him." The room was very quiet. Walter looked at me for a long time. "You're his son, Caleb. That means you look beneath the surface. He started teaching you before you could even tie your shoes. He was building you. He was building you for this." I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to be 17 years old and stupid. I wanted to worry about prom and college applications and whether a girl named Haley would text me back. I didn't want to be a weapon a dead man had forged. But I was. There's a USB drive. I figured, I don't know the password. Walter looked at his hands. He had 2 phrases. Things he said over and over. You remember the first one. "Look beneath the surface. It's not that one." The other one. He used to say it when you were small. When you were afraid. A storm. The dark. A nightmare. He used to lean down and put his forehead against yours. I waited. Walter closed his eyes. He'd say, "I'm right here, kid." Something in my chest cracked open. I had forgotten. I had completely forgotten that he used to say that. I pulled my laptop from my backpack. I plugged in the USB. I typed, "I'm right there." The folder opened. 1 file. A video. I clicked play. He looked so tired. Dark hollows under his eyes. Thinner hair. Pale skin. The collar of his shirt loose around his neck. But alive. "Caleb," his voice. Coming out of the laptop speakers. Exactly the same. Exactly. Like he had stepped out of the room for a minute and walked back in. I made a sound I didn't recognize as my own. Walter reached across the table and put his hand over mine. "Caleb, if you are watching this, I didn't make it home. And I am so sorry." He took a breath. 5.5 years ago, I made a mistake. I found something I shouldn't have. And I made the worst decision of my life. I took it to a man I thought was my friend. He looked off camera, like he was checking the door. Then he looked back. "His name is Detective Fenton Doyle." The room went silent. Walter's hand tightened on mine. I brought him everything. Photographs, the ledger, the names. I trusted him because he had been to your birthday party when you were 10. Caleb, I trusted him because I had no one else. My father's eyes filled. 2 days later, I was being followed. I realized Doyle had sold me to the Ashcrofts. The same day I walked into his office, he walked out and made a phone call. I couldn't breathe. I had to make a choice. If I came home, they would have hurt you. They would have hurt Lenora. So I did the only thing I could think of. I made them think I had run. I gave Doyle a story. Financial pressure. Midlife crisis. He sold the lie because he was the one who had set me up. My father wiped his face with his sleeve. "I am the reason you grew up thinking I left you, Caleb, and I will carry that into whatever comes next. But please understand, I didn't leave. I ran so they wouldn't follow me home." I couldn't see the screen. My eyes were too full. "There is one more thing. There is a girl, Mara Vance, 19 years old, daughter of Hadrian Vance. Hadrian was the closest thing to a brother I ever had. He was helping me. He died 11 months after I disappeared. They made it look like a car accident. It wasn't. His daughter knows the truth. She's been studying everything her father left behind. She's smarter than I am, Caleb. She knows things I never could. Find her. He paused. He looked at me. Through the screen. Across 5 years. I'm right here, kid. I have always been right here. The video ended. I sat at Walter's table for a long time. Finally, I said, Doyle was at our house last Sunday. I know. He brought my mother a casserole. Walter's jaw tightened. He has been in my house every month for 5 years. I know, Caleb. I looked at the brass key. How do I find Mara Vance? Walter stood. He walked to a small writing desk. He pulled open a drawer. He came back with a folded piece of paper. Your father gave me this. The week before he disappeared, he said, if you ever showed up at my door, I should give it to you. I unfolded the paper. An address. A coffee shop on Capitol Hill. Ask for Mara. He thought of everything. He thought of you. I drove home at 3 in the morning. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table. She was in her bathrobe. Her hair was down. The kitchen lights were off. A single mug of tea sat in front of her. Cold. Untouched. She had been waiting. She didn't look up. She just said, very quietly, sit down, Caleb. So I sat down, across from her. At the table where my father had drawn the treasure map 5 years ago. There's a brass key in your backpack. I stared at her. You went through my backpack. I'm your mother. You skipped school and didn't come home until 3 in the morning. Yes. She reached across the table. She put her hand on mine. Her hand was warm. Caleb, I need to tell you something I have been carrying alone for 5 years, and I cannot carry it for 1 more day. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, a car passed. The wet hiss of tires on pavement. I have always known your father didn't leave us. The world stopped. What? I have always known. Mum. I knew that night. I knew when his coffee mug was still warm on the counter. I knew when his keys were gone, but his wallet was on the dresser. Your father did not pack to leave us. Your father walked into something. I was shaking my head. You let me believe. I let you survive. There is a difference. You let me believe he didn't love me enough to stay. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. There was a piece of paper. He hid it in our Bible, inside the Book of Lamentations, where I would find it, where Doyle wouldn't think to look. On it was one name, Ashcroft, and a phone number. I couldn't breathe. I called the number. From a payphone at the hospital. A man answered. I asked for your father. The man laughed at me, Caleb. He laughed. And he said, he won't be coming home, ma'am. You should probably stop calling this number. And he hung up. I put my head in my hands. I went to Detective Doyle, I told him. I showed him the paper. Doyle held it for a long time. He looked at me with those soft eyes of his, and he said, Linda, there are people in this city who hurt children. I have seen the worst of what they can do. If you take this any further, your son becomes a target. If you stay quiet, your son grows up. I lifted my head. He threatened you. He warned me. He told me he was protecting us. He told me the only way to keep you alive was to let the world think your father had run. And I believed him. God help me, I believed him. Because the alternative was you. The alternative was you in a coffin. She broke. My mother broke into pieces at the kitchen table. I went around the table and I put my arms around her, and I held her while she shook. My mother had not let me hold her in 5 years. She had been the strong one. She had been the brave one. She had been the one making the casseroles and pretending she was fine. She had been carrying a lie the size of a body. She had been carrying it alone so I wouldn't have to. I should have told you. No, I should have. No, Mom. I should have given you the choice. You gave me a childhood. She cried harder. I held my mother in the kitchen at 3:30 in the morning, and I understood, maybe for the first time in my life, what love costs. Love doesn't cost what you give up. Love costs what you carry. Silently. For years. Because you cannot bear to put it down on someone you love more than yourself. I told her everything. When I was done, she stood up. She poured her cold tea into the sink. She rinsed the mug. She set it upside down on the drying rack. She turned around. "What do you need from me?" It wasn't a question. It was a vow. "Mom, tell me what you need, Caleb." "I need you to stay alive." "Done." "I need you to act normal if Doyle calls." "Done." "I need you to not ask me where I'm going tomorrow." She closed her eyes. She opened them. "Done." She came around the table. She kissed the top of my head, the way my father used to, the night he stepped into the rain. I slept 3 hours. When I woke up, the rain had started again. I drove to Capitol Hill. The coffee shop was small, tucked between a barber shop and a record store. Peeling gold lettering, Vance Brothers Coffee, inside. A college student typing on a laptop, a man reading a newspaper, the hiss of a steam wand. The girl behind the counter was 19. She had short black hair cut blunt at the chin, a black t-shirt, a denim apron. Her left forearm had a small Latin tattoo in fine script. Memento. Remember. She didn't smile when I walked in. She didn't smile when I ordered. She didn't smile when I sat down directly in front of her. I waited until the man with the newspaper left, until the college student put on headphones, until the bell above the door stopped jingling. Then I said, very quietly, "Mara." Her hands stopped polishing. "My name is Caleb Mercer. My father was Daxton Mercer." She closed her eyes for 1 second, just one. Then she opened them. She set down the polishing cloth. She walked to the front door. She flipped the sign from open to closed. She turned the deadbolt. She walked back behind the counter. She looked at me for a long time. "I have been waiting for you for 4 years, Mara Vance said. We worked for 3 days. Out of the back room of the coffee shop. A storage space lined with bags of coffee beans. A single hanging light bulb. A folding card table. Mara was faster than I was. Smarter. Angria. Her father had been a structural engineer. He had also been an early adopter network security consultant in the late 90s. He had taught her everything before he died. He had been teaching her since she was 8 years old. She had grown up with 2 languages, English and code. She had spent 4 years studying her father's killers. She had files, spreadsheets, a binder full of Ashcroft news clippings going back a decade, photographs of every man on Hollis Ashcroft's security team, the floor plans of 3 Ashcroft buildings. She had been a teenager preparing for war, and nobody had known. She showed me a photograph. A man in a charcoal suit. Mid-40s, sharp jaw, cold eyes. Marcus Vale, Ashcroft's head of security. "He killed your father. He killed mine. He has killed 6 others we know of." I looked at the man's face. He looked like a banker. That was what scared me most. On the second day, Mara introduced me to a name I hadn't heard before. Sloan Reyes, investigative journalist for the Pacific Tribune. She has been writing about the Ashcrofts for 2 years, asking the right questions. If anyone can put our evidence in front of the public, it's her. Have you talked to her? No. I was waiting for you. We called her from a burner phone. She picked up on the second ring. Warm voice. Professional. Slightly tired in the way of women who have heard too many stories. "This is Sloan. Miss Reyes. My name is Caleb Mercer. A pause. Daxton Mercer's son." "Yes." Another pause. Longer. "Tell me where to meet you." Discovery Park. A pebble beach at the western edge of the city. A gray afternoon. A wet wind. A few dog walkers. A few empty park benches. Sloan Reyes was younger than I expected. Early 30s. Dark hair pulled back. A long black coat. A leather messenger bag slung across her chest. She shook my hand. Firm grip. Steady eyes. She sat down. Mara and I sat on either side of her. I told her about the storage unit, about the journal, about the Cascadia light, about the names, about Cornelius Ashcroft and Hollis Ashcroft and Detective Fenton Doyle. I left out my mother. I left out Walter Knox. I left out the cloud backup. Mara had warned me, tell her enough to make her hungry. Don't tell her everything. I gave Sloan just enough. She nodded slowly. She wrote down notes. She was good. Professional. calm. She asked to see the evidence. I pulled the USB drive out of my pocket. I held it in my hand. I almost gave it to her. But Mara? Mara was not listening to Sloan anymore. Mara was staring across the parking lot at the far edge of the park. I saw her face go very still. She put her hand on my knee, under the bench. She squeezed. Hard, Mara. She didn't answer. I followed her eyes. 3 black SUVs, parked at the far end of the lot. No license plates. No drivers visible. They had not been there when we arrived. Sloan Reyes was holding out her hand. May I see it, Caleb? Her voice was kind. Her voice was calm. Her voice was the same warm, professional voice it had been on the phone. But the hand she was holding out was not shaking. A journalist receiving the biggest story of her career. A story that would win her a Pulitzer. That journalist's hand should have been shaking. Sloan Reyes' hand was perfectly still. Mara stood up. She pulled me up with her. Caleb, walk. Don't run yet. Sloan Reyes' face changed. The warmth disappeared. Just disappeared. Like a mask falling away. What was underneath was nothing. Not anger. Not regret. Just a flat, professional emptiness. She reached into her messenger bag. Mara grabbed my arm. We started walking. The doors of the SUVs opened. Men got out. Mara said, Run. I will not forget the sound of those boots on the pebbles behind us. I will not forget Mara's hand in mine, pulling me up a steep embankment into the trees. I will not forget the wet branches whipping my face, the smell of pine and salt and fear. Halfway up the embankment, a bullet hit a tree 6 inches from my head. The bark exploded. A long splinter of wood, a flash of glass from a nearby greenhouse that had been caught in the same shot. I felt the cut open across my shoulder before I felt the pain. The pain came later. The pain came when we were in the back of a city bus on Aurora Avenue with no money and no plan, and the front of my hoodie soaked dark with blood. The pain came when we kicked open the door of an abandoned church on Beacon Hill at midnight. The roof half collapsed. The stained glass cracked. The pews covered in 50 years of dust. Mara cut my hoodie off with a pocket knife by the light of her phone. She washed the wound with a bottle of water she had stolen from a vending machine. It's not deep. You're lucky. This is lucky. You're not dead. That's lucky. She tied a strip of her own t-shirt around my shoulder. Tight. She sat back on her heels. She looked at me. He sold us out, Doyle. Or someone above him. Sloan Reyes works for them. Has worked for them. Probably for years she has been planted, waiting for a story like ours. I leaned back against a broken pew. We can't go to the papers. No. We can't go to the police. No. We can't go to the FBI. Not yet. Not without something they cannot ignore. What do they cannot ignore? She looked up at the cracked stained glass. The names. The original passenger manifest. The captain's logbook. Your father said it was hidden in Hollis Ashcroft's private archive. In the basement of Ashcroft Plaza. I stared at her. You want to break into Ashcroft Plaza. I want to walk in. It's a 42-story skyscraper with armed security and a head of security who has killed 8 people. Yes. You're insane. I'm angry. There's a difference. She looked at me. Her eyes in the dim streetlight were the color of old coffee. My father is dead. Your father is dead. 87 people are dead. The man who did it has dinner in a penthouse tonight while his lawyers eat the city alive. We are not going to fix this the normal way. I said nothing. So we're not going to do this the normal way. Outside, the rain started. The first soft drops, then harder. A full Seattle pour, drumming on the broken roof. I looked up at the cracked, stained glass. I thought about Eliza Mercer on a dock. I thought about my father stepping into the rain. I thought about my mother handing me the keys to a burgundy Camry. I thought about 87 people in cold water in the dark. The boy who had dusted shelves at an antique store was gone. Whatever was sitting in his place was someone my father had built. I looked at Mara. Okay. Tell me how we get in. She smiled. For the first time since I had met her, Mara Vance smiled. A small smile. A bad smile. The smile of a girl who had been waiting 4 years for permission. "We need help," she said. "We need the old man." "Walter. Walter. He's 70 years old." "Yeah." Mara's smile got a little wider. "And he knows the building better than the people who built it." Walter Knox arrived at the abandoned church at 4 in the morning. He came in a panel van, old, brown, rusted around the wheel wells. The kind of van you would walk past on the street and never look at twice. He climbed out slowly, one leg first, then the other. He was carrying a thermos. He looked at Mara. "Hadrian's girl." Mara nodded. "You look like him." Mara's eyes filled. She did not cry. She just nodded again. Walter handed me the thermos. "Drink this. Hot. Soup. You haven't eaten in a day. Walter, drink first, plan second." So I drank. We sat in the back of the van. Walter had folded down a small wooden bench. He had set out 3 cups. He had brought a roll of butcher paper, a pencil case full of mechanical pencils. He spread the butcher paper across the floor of the van. He drew. He did not draw like an old man. He drew like a man who had drawn 1,000 buildings on 1,000 pieces of paper. His lines were fast, precise, exact. The shape of Ashcroft Plaza emerged on the paper. A cross-section, 42 floors above, 5 floors below. "Loading bay," Walter said, tapping the paper. "Sub 1, Friday night they have an event. Big one. Penthouse. Ashcroft is launching some new development. The whole city will be there." Caleb walks in with the caterers. He tapped the paper again. Lower. "Sub 3, that's the archive. His private archive. No staff. No security inside. He has a fingerprint reader on the door. But," Walter reached into the breast pocket of his cardigan. He pulled out a small device, black, plastic, about the size of a deck of cards. "Your father made this," Walter said, 6 years ago. When he was restoring the cabinets that started this whole mess, Ashcroft asked him to install a new security panel in the family's penthouse. Your father copied the master fingerprint signature off the panel. He encoded it onto this. He gave it to me a week before he disappeared. He said, "Walter, hold on to this. One day, my son might need it." I stared at the device. "What does it do?" "You hold it against any Ashcroft fingerprint scanner. The scanner reads Hollis Ashcroft. You walk in like you own the place." "How did you keep this for 5 years?" Walter looked at me. "I kept it because he asked me to. I don't ask questions when a friend asks me to keep something." And the archive itself. Walter rolled up the sleeve of his cardigan. I had been working at the shop for 2 years, and I had never seen his forearms uncovered. Tonight I saw a long, deep scar running from his wrist to his elbow, pale, old. Alaska, 1973. I was a civil engineer. I worked for the mining companies, blasting tunnels, until one of the tunnels almost blasted me. I was buried alive for 6 hours under 12 feet of rubble. Walter, I know how buildings work, Caleb. I know how to read a blueprint. I know where the weak points are. I know how to cut power to a sub-level without setting off the building's main fire system. That is all I know. Anything more complicated. Mara handles. He looked at her. Mara nodded. "I handle the cameras," she said. "I handle the press feed. I handle the broadcast. Walter handles the physical infrastructure." I looked at the 2 of them. The old man with the scarred forearm. The girl with the Latin tattoo. I had a sudden image of my father in this same van, with these same 2 people, 6 years ago, drawing the same diagram on the same butcher paper, plans on top of plans, a family business of avenging the dead. Some legacies you inherit on purpose. We rehearsed for 2 days. Walter ran us through the floor plans, over and over. The catering entrance, the service elevator, the stairwell, the hallway on sub 3, the exact words to say if anyone asked who I was. Mara configured everything she would need. 3 small wireless cameras she would plant in the press area, a laptop running an air-gapped broadcast hijacker she had built herself, a pre-programmed press release that would push the photographs to every news outlet in the Pacific Northwest the moment she pressed a button. She had been building this for 4 years. She had been waiting for the right boy to walk into her coffee shop. I called my mother once. From a payphone outside a gas station on Holman Road. She picked up on the first ring. Caleb. Mom, are you alive? Yes. Are you safe? Yes. Are you doing something stupid? I didn't answer. She breathed out very slowly. She said, okay. When? Friday night. Friday night is Doyle's poker night with his unit. I closed my eyes. I had never loved my mother more. She had been watching. She had been remembering. She had been keeping track of the schedule of the man who had stolen our lives. For 5 years. Mom, I'll be at the hospital. Double shift. ICU. There will be 100 witnesses if anyone tries anything. Mom, Caleb, I love you. She did not break. She said, very steady, come home, baby. Then she hung up. Friday night. The rain held off, for once. The sky over Seattle was a high, cold blue going to black. The lights of Ashcroft Plaza burned at the top of the city like a crown. I stood across the street in a catering uniform. White shirt, black vest, black pants, a laminated badge clipped to my pocket. Antonin's Catering. Aaron M. I was not Caleb Mercer tonight. I was Aaron M. It was the easiest disguise in the world. Mara was already inside. She had gone in 20 minutes ago through the press entrance. Black blazer, notepad, camera around her neck. Walter was in the panel van 2 blocks east, with one laptop open, watching the building's electrical schematic, his hand on the panic button. I tapped my earpiece. Walter, I see you. Going in. Slow down. Caterers are tired. Caterers don't walk like they have somewhere to be. I slowed down. I joined the line of catering staff. I picked up a tray of empty wine glasses. I followed the man in front of me, through the loading bay, past the first checkpoint, down to the kitchen prep area on sub 1. I set my tray down. I picked up an empty water pitcher. I walked to the staff hallway. I did not look at the cameras. I knew exactly where every camera was. The service stairwell smelled like concrete and old paint. I went down 2 floors. The sound of the party above me faded. The hum of the building's machinery rose around me. The low electric heartbeat of 42 stories, pretending not to notice the boy walking deeper into its basement. Sub 3. I came out into a hallway. The hallway was empty. The lights were dim. The walls were paneled in dark wood, like a private library. There was a single door at the far end, heavy, carved. A small fingerprint scanner glowing softly to the right of the handle. I walked toward it. I held my father's device against the scanner. The scanner blinked green. The door clicked open. I stepped inside. The archive was beautiful. That was what I was not prepared for. I had expected something dirty, something hidden, the room where a guilty family kept its sins. Instead, the room was beautiful. Soft amber lighting, polished oak shelves climbing to a high ceiling, glass display cases lined down the center like a museum, old leather-bound ledgers behind glass, antique compasses, a piece of weathered ship's wood mounted on a brass plaque, a faded American flag from the 1860s folded in a triangular case, and in the center of the room, on a small velvet pedestal, under a single spotlight, a small black notebook. I walked toward it. I had to remind myself to breathe. The notebook was open, to a specific page, like the pages of a Bible in a church. I leaned over the glass case. I looked down at the page. It was a list, a handwritten list in faded brown ink. The writing was tight, cramped. The hand of a man writing fast. The hand of a man writing while his ship was sinking. Anya Petrov, age 24, with daughter Mira, age 3. Joseph Mulligan, age 41. Ko-hyun Jae, age 36. With brother Ko-hyun Min, age 32. Eliza Mercer, age 19, with infant son. I made a sound, a small sound. I had not meant to make a sound. The captain of the SS Cascadia Light had written down 87 names before he drowned. He had included ages. He had included relationships. He had written with daughter. He had written with brother. He had written with infant son. He had not let them be just numbers. He had given them what their killer had tried to take. He had given them their humanity. I lifted the glass case. It was not even locked. Why would it be locked? No one was ever supposed to find this room. I took out my phone. I started photographing. I uploaded each photograph to the cloud as I went. Walter's voice in my earpiece. Calm. Steady. You have 4 minutes. Copy. 2 cars just pulled into the loading bay. Not catering. Move faster, Caleb. I moved faster. I was on the last page when the lights came on. The full lights. Not the soft amber light. The full overhead fluorescence. I did not turn around. I knew before I turned. A voice? Soft. Old. Cultivated. Hello, Caleb. I turned. Hollis Ashcroft. In a tuxedo. 75 years old. Tall. Lean. Silver hair perfectly combed. A black bow tie. A glass of champagne in one hand. He looked exactly like the photographs in the old society pages. Like a man at his own party. Behind him stood 2 other men. Marcus Vale. Detective Fenton Doyle. Vale had a pistol in his right hand. Held low. Doyle was carrying nothing. His hands were empty. His eyes were on the floor. Time stretched out the way Walter had said it would. If they catch you, Caleb, don't panic. They are going to want to talk before they do anything else. Rich men can't help themselves. Walter had been right. Your father was a brilliant man. Hollis Ashcroft stepped further into the room. He glanced at the open display case. He sighed, the way a parent sighs at a child who has gotten into the cookies. Daxton came closer than anyone in 120 years. I respected him, truly. I tried to bring him in. I offered him more money than he had ever seen. He chose otherwise. I did not say anything. I let him talk. Walter had told me to. Every second he talks is a second I can buy you. You are very young. So I will give you the choice I gave your father. I will give it to you only once. He gestured at the room around us. This room has stood for 50 years. It has held my family's history for 3 generations. We are not bad people. We are simply people who understand that history is not a moral document. History is what survives. The men who built this country were brutal. The pretty stories came later. We did not invent this. We inherited it. I stared at him. He believed it. He actually believed it. This man, who lived in a penthouse on the bones of children, believed he was a good steward. He held out his hand. Give me your phone, Caleb. Doyle, behind him, looked up. Just for a second. Doyle looked at me. His eyes were wet. I lifted my phone. I made a show of holding it out. Ashcroft took 1 step forward. Doyle did not move. Vale lifted his pistol, and the building went dark. Every light in the archive snapped off. Every light in the hallway. Every light on Sub 3. Emergency floodlights kicked in 2 seconds later. Red, harsh, throbbing. Weiter, 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 weiter. He had cut the power to the entire sublevel. Vale spun toward the door. What the hell? In the same moment, every speaker in the building lit up. Not a fire alarm. A voice. A voice I had not heard speak through a public address system in 5 years. My name is Daxton Mercer. I am recording this in case I do not survive. The man planning to kill me is named Marcus Vale. He works for Hollis Ashcroft. Hollis Ashcroft's empire was built by his great-grandfather, Cornelius Ashcroft, who deliberately sank the SS Cascadia Light to steal a shipment of gold and to murder 87 witnesses. The original passenger manifest is hidden in the basement archive of Ashcroft Plaza. The 87 names are real. Their families never knew what happened to them. My father's voice filled the building. Hollis Ashcroft turned slowly toward the speakers mounted in the corners of the archive. His face had gone gray. I have copies of all this evidence in safe deposit boxes and trusted hands. If I die, this recording is released. If I live, I will release it myself. Either way, their secret is over. Above us, in the lobby, hundreds of guests were hearing the same broadcast. Reporters, politicians, investors, the mayor. Mara had pushed the photographs of the captain's logbook to every screen in the building, every promotional television in the lobby, every digital display on every floor, the 87 names scrolling across every screen Ashcroft owned in his own building. On his own night, Caleb, listen. Doyle was speaking, quietly, under the broadcast. Caleb, go, up the stairwell. The press is on the lobby floor. They will see you. Go. Vale snapped his head toward Doyle. What did you say? Doyle did not look at Vale. He was looking at me. Go, son. Doyle. Vale's voice was a whisper. Doyle. What are you doing? Doyle finally turned and looked at Vale. The face of an old broken cop. 20 years too late to be a good man. 5 seconds too late to take it back. My job, Doyle said, for the first time in a long while. He did not pull a gun. He did not lunge. He simply stepped sideways. Between Vale's pistol and me, he blocked the shot with his body. It was not heroic. It was not redemption. It was an old man using the only using the I ran. I do not remember the stairwell. I do not remember the door at the top. I remember coming up into the lobby of Ashcroft Plaza into a wall of confusion. Hundreds of guests in tuxedos and gowns. Emergency lighting throbbing red. The fire alarm now blaring. Security guards yelling into radios. A few people laughing nervously, thinking it was a drill, holding champagne glasses they had forgotten to put down. And in the center of the lobby, around the bank of televisions that always played the building's promotional video, every screen was showing the photograph. The first page of the captain's logbook. The 87 names. Above them, a scrolling banner. Evidence of murder. The Ashcroft family. SS Cascadia Light. 7 victims. Full file at the link below. A local news reporter was already filming. The press from the rooftop event were pouring down with their phones out. I saw Mara across the lobby. She saw me. She started walking, fast, weaving between guests. She reached me. She grabbed my hand. She pulled me toward the front doors. We walked out into the cold Seattle night. We did not run. Walking is what innocent people do. We walked past the news vans pulling up, past the police cars arriving, past Walter's brown panel van parked exactly where he had said. Walter was already out of the van. He saw us coming. He nodded. Once. The way one soldier nods to another when the bridge has fallen and the river has crossed. By midnight, every news outlet in the Pacific Northwest had the photographs. By morning, the FBI had opened a federal investigation. By noon, Hollis Ashcroft had been formally arrested at the lobby of his own building. He had refused to leave the archive. He had refused to speak without his attorneys. He had stood in front of the soaked display case where the captain's logbook still sat. He had said nothing. He would say nothing for the next 11 months. Until a federal jury said it for him. Marcus Vale was caught at the Canadian border the next morning. He fired on the officers who tried to stop him. The exchange did not end well for him. Detective Fenton Doyle surrendered himself voluntarily to the federal field office on Spring Street. They asked him why. He said one sentence. His mother deserved better than me. He never said anything else. He took every charge they brought against him and pled guilty to all of them. He would die in federal prison 6 years later. Heart attack. His ashes were never claimed. That part I would only learn much later. I came home that night at 5 a.m. The kitchen lights were on. My mother was sitting at the table. She did not stand. She did not say anything. She just looked at me. I walked across the kitchen. I put the brass key on the lace tablecloth in front of her. Number 418. I sat down across from my mother. I started to cry. She got up. She came around the table. She knelt down beside my chair. She put her arms around me. She held me the way she had not held me since I was a small child. We stayed like that for a long time, until the gray Seattle morning began to come up over the houses across the street, until the rain started again, until my mother said, very softly, into my hair, "He would be so proud of you, baby. Mom, he would be so proud. Mom, shh. Mom, I think it's over." She held me tighter. "It's over, baby. It's over." 1 week later. The city held a memorial. They held it on the long pier at the western edge of the harbor, the exact place where the SS Cascadia Light had been seen for the last time. A new monument had been quickly commissioned, cast in bronze, 87 names, in the same handwriting as the captain's logbook, reproduced exactly, with ages, with relationships. Anya Petrov, age 24, with daughter Mira, age 3. Joseph Mulligan, age 41. Ko-hyun Jae, age 36, with brother Ko-hyun Min, age 32. Eliza Mercer, age 19, with infant son. The mayor spoke. A historian spoke. A woman whose great-grandfather had been on the ship spoke. She had not known. None of them had known. Across the country, 87 families were finding out at the same time that they had lost someone they had never been told existed. I did not speak. I had not been asked. I stood at the back of the crowd in a borrowed black coat. My mother on one side, Mara on the other, Walter behind us. Leaning on a cane he had only started using 2 days before. He had pulled a muscle in his back getting in and out of the panel van too many times. When the speeches were finished, the crowd dispersed. My mother and Mara and Walter stepped back. They knew I needed to do this alone. I walked up to the bronze monument. I read each of the 87 names. I took my time. I touched the bronze with my fingers. Some of the letters were still warm from the casting. I knelt down. I reached into my coat pocket. I took out the gold chain. The chain that had belonged to Eliza Mercer. The one she had worn around her neck when she swam through the cold black water with my grandfather strapped to her chest. The one Walter had kept in a small wooden box for 5 years because my father had asked him to. I laid the chain at the base of the monument. I closed my eyes. I said, "There you go." I said, "You have your name back." I stood up. I walked back to my mother. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my father's journal. My mother had made tea. She set a mug down in front of me. The same mug she had been drinking from at 3 in the morning, the night I told her everything. She kissed the top of my head. She went to bed. I opened the journal. I had read every page before, but I had read them looking for clues, for evidence, for a roadmap to what came next. I had never read them as a son reading his father. I read slowly this time. The neat architectural handwriting on the first pages, calm, organized, then somewhere around the middle, getting smaller, tighter, faster. The way a man writes when he knows he is running out of time. On the very last page, I found something I had not noticed before. A single sentence, in pencil, small, tucked into the bottom corner where I had missed it the first dozen times. "Caleb, don't look for me, look for them." "Dad," I sat with the journal in my lap. "Don't look for me, look for them." 5 years my father had been gone. 5 years I had spent trying to remember him, trying to reconstruct him. The smell of his coat, the sound of his voice, the exact tone of his laugh. He had not wanted me to do that. He had wanted me to look at someone else. He had wanted me to look at Eliza Mercer on a dock. He had wanted me to look at Anya Petrov holding her 3-year-old daughter. He had wanted me to look at Ko-hyun Jae and his younger brother. He had wanted me to look at every one of the 87. He had wanted me to know that he was not the most important person in his own story. They were. He had stepped into the rain on a Tuesday night 5 years ago because he had understood something. He had understood that his life was small enough to spend. Spending it on this was worth it, and he had wanted his son to know. I closed the journal. I picked up the mug of tea my mother had made. The tea was hot. The tea was strong. The tea was the best thing I had ever tasted. Outside, the rain kept falling on the city. But inside, in our small kitchen, a boy who had lost everything sat at a table and drank the tea his mother had poured. And, for the first time in 5 years, I was home.